Hey YouTube, what is going on? Welcome to another video. In this one, I will be going through a complete starter item guide for support players in Smite. I'll be going over everything from the basics of what the items do, why to pick between them, what's best in the laning phase, what's best in the late game, all the way to more advanced discussion, meta that's going on, or what characters want to use certain starters, you know, some small little interactions, tips, tricks, that sort of thing, as well as a tier list at the end. Hopefully, whether you are new to Smite or you are an experienced player, or maybe you're somebody who used to play in the past and is just now getting back into it, there should be something for everybody to learn from this video, or at least get a new idea or some inspiration, or kind of understand the way I think about it. Don't get caught up on meta too much. This stuff can always change, but the information in this video should pretty much be permanent unless they completely change what these starter items do, and if they do, I'll redo it. With all of that out of the way, before we jump in, I want to cover one little brief important topic, which is why do we have to pick from the support starters? Why can't I pick a jungle starter? Why can't I pick Tainted? Why can't I go Sands of Time? All that sort of stuff. You can if you really want. You could definitely try to snowball a game and assume that you're going to get a massive lead and you can get really fed and be able to go those starters, and in the late game they might be very effective. But support starter items have gotten changed design-wise repeatedly because other roles have abused them, and there's a reason for that. It is because the support starter items are so efficient, they are so powerful for how much they give you with limited resources, that if every role was able to do that and abuse them, they absolutely would. Support starter items are so powerful because they are cheaper to upgrade, and you can upgrade them earlier than every other role. Every other role you have to wait until level 20. In support, we only have to wait until level 15. All of our starter items give us additional gold throughout the game, which is massive. The whole identity of support is that you are the selfless player on the map. You're not soloing waves, you're not soloing jungle camps, you're not taking resources from your other teammates. Your whole job is to be doing a lot with as little as you can take from them. Because of that, having starter items that generate us gold just by existing and also allow us to upgrade them earlier than everyone else and do it for cheaper, it is so core to what the support role does. Even if you want to play a support that essentially goes full damage, you're still going to be more successful with a support starter item than you would be with using another class's starter. With that out of the way, we're going to jump into the God Builder, and I'm going to talk a little bit about which each one does, and you know, sort of how to pick them, and just a brief overview. If you're an experienced player, maybe you don't need to listen to this part. I'm just going to make sure we're all on the same page and we know what every single item does. To start off, we're just going to focus on the base starter items that you buy at level 1 at the start of the game. First up is Sentinel's Gift. Now, if you are a returning Smite player, if you were, you know, around back in the old days and you're just not getting back into it, Sentinel's is just the same as Watcher's Gift in the past. It is pretty much the cookie cutter vanilla support starter that's been around since before I was playing the game, which is a long time ago. Pretty simple, 10 of each protections at the start of the game, 75 health and 7 MP5. Whenever you get an assist for an enemy minion or jungle monster dying, it will give you 8 bonus gold, 12 health, and 8 mana. Keyword here is you have to get an assist. You do not want to be getting the last hit on those, so if you are with your ADC or your jungler or your mid laner, make sure that you're not actually last hitting or the one clearing the whole camp. Another big part of this is you have to be within 30 units of an allied god to receive this effect. That buff will last for a little bit, so you can jump around lane to lane and still have this effect on you. But if you are alone in solo lane and you buy this item, it's not going to do anything for you. Overall, Sentinels is pretty much the base. It's the standard. It is the vanilla support starter item, and it is really good. It's been very core for a very long time. You'll notice that it is 550 gold. That is also a big deal. All of the support starter items are cheaper than the counterparts that we see in other roles. 700, 700, 750. In general, our starters are a little bit cheaper, which is really nice. Next up, we have Benevolence. Now, Benevolence has been around for a couple years now. It was introduced at the start of Season 8. 75 health, 10 MP5, and 10 HP5. I'm not going to read the full description because I think I'll lose you guys and it'll just confuse you more. What you need to know about Benevolence is that it has kind of your own stacking mechanic. So all of these starter items are the same in that you don't want to be the one last hitting creeps when you're clearing with your ADC at the start of the game. You want to be getting the assist bonus, but unlike the other starters, you're not actually gaining per minion kill gold and health and mana. Instead, you're gaining 5 stacks of benevolence per kill. What the stacks of benevolence do is that it's kind of like a stored health pool, and whenever you or your lane partner take some damage, your stacks of benevolence will heal both of you, and it will also give you gold for healing them. You can also gain a stack not only by getting an assist, but just by running around, just by existing. If you are by yourself, you're not near any teammates, you're running out of base, you will be getting stacks of benevolence for every single second that you're not near a teammate. The reason this is significant is because benevolence is actually the only support starter that you can get value out of even when you're not near your teammates. It is basically a permanent health pool reserve. You can have up to 50 stacks, and then whenever you are near a teammate, you will drain your stack, healing both of you and giving you back some gold. That was a mouthful, but now that we're all on the same page, we all know what all the items do, let's really get down to business and talk about which ones are better and why. First, we're going to go through what is best at level 1, so we're going to compare the base starter items. Now, as I had mentioned, kind of descriptions and talking through all the items, most of these are pretty similar. Benevolence is really the only odd man out. When you're talking about what's best at level 1, if you're fighting, it's by far Warflag, because it's the only one that gives you a bonus effect that will actually help you in the middle of fight. The bonus attack speed and the bonus movement speed is actually really nice. If you are an aggressive lane, let's say you're someone like a Sylvanas and you have like an Izanami or an Ishtar or something like that with you that will clear the wave instantly, you can get 12% attack speed for both of you and have the movement speed to just continuously chase down an enemy lane, which is really, really nice. You don't actually get damage increase from this effect, but it basically translates to be the same thing. The other thing about Warflag that's really, really nice is that at the start of the game, if you're pulling the jungle camps with your ADC on your initial clear, you actually have more movement speed to run to lane first, so you'll normally get there first and you'll be able to clear faster than the other team. After Warflag, it kind of is all a little bit more up in the air. I would generally say that Sentinels is probably the second best item in lane, just because it still gives you protections, which is a really, really big deal to mitigate damage, especially if you're against a Guardian and a Hunter on the other team. Having protections of both type is really, really nice to mitigate some damage. It also just gives you a good bit of sustain. Having the 12 health per assist is really nice. Protector's Mask will give you the same exact thing, but you don't have protections on the base item, and it is also decreasing your damage dealt. The damage taken effect can be really good, but at this stage of the game, having just flat protections is actually probably going to mitigate more damage than just having the damage decrease taken decrease effect. Bam, I'm good with words. And then finally, I would say Benevolence is actually the worst starter at level 1, but by no means is it bad. It is still very, very good. It just doesn't make you that tanky because you don't have the protections, but this is actually the best option to sustain your lane partner. If you had a like Bellona ADC or some wacky ADC pick, maybe a melee character or a warrior, Warflag could be really good for them, but so would Benevolence, because with your Benevolence, you can actually heal them for your maximum HP. Even though it doesn't seem like the best, this item is nothing to scoff at. It still is a ton of additional HP for you and your lane partner throughout the game, or throughout the laning phase, excuse me. It's basically the equivalent of having an extra health potion or two, which is really, really nice. The final thing to talk about with the level 1 effects of all of these is the gold difference. You'll notice that Warflag and Benevolence are the same at 600 gold, but Sentinel's Gift is actually 50 gold cheaper, whereas Protector's Mask is 50 gold more. So with Sentinels, you get one additional potion or ward at the start of the game, and with Lonos, you get one less potion or ward at the start of the game. Another thing to note here is that because Protector's Mask can only be bought by assassins, mages, and hunters, if you were choosing between Sentinel's Gift or Protector's Mask on those types of characters, it is actually 2 less potions that you get for Protector's Mask. So not only you have a little bit less tankiness because you don't have the protections, but you also have 100 gold less in potions, which is a really, really big deal in the laning phase. When it comes to which of these starter items are best, kind of in that mid-game stage, like between the laning phase and before you upgrade them, there's really not too much to speak on. I'd say Sentinel's Gift, and Sentinel's Gift is just vanilla, right? Like it's always just consistent, it's the same sort of thing. thing. Benevolence I actually think is the best starter item when it comes to mid game, and the reason for that is on this effect, as you are continuing to get more levels, as you're continuing to gain more health, it's actually really nice because you'll just be healing for more and more throughout the game. So the sustain is kind of always relative to how tanky you are, which is really nice because you're building more health, but your teammates probably aren't, which means you'll just continue to heal them more and more. So it is really, really effective sustain for your whole team. Also because it will give you stacks as you're roaming around, as you're running around and you're not near your teammates or getting creep assist. You'll always be able to generate some amount of farm, even if you're not actually sitting in a lane the whole time and clearing waves, which you're really not as a support. We spend a lot of time roaming around. To a similar sort of effect, War Flag is really nice at helping you roam around. You kill a wave, you and your teammate roam a little bit faster, you rotate quicker with the movement speed. The attack speed tends to not be as impactful, but it's still noticeable. It's definitely still nice. And then Protector's Mask, it can either be the best item in the mid game or it can be the worst item in the mid game, and it really all depends on how much you value dealing your own damage. If you are a character that you actually don't care about dealing damage at all and you purely care about being tanky and crowd controlling the enemy or doing whatever else you got going on, it can actually be the best starter item because you're decreasing a lot of damage that you're taking throughout the game. 0.25% damage decrease per level. You know, if you are at level 10, we're talking about an additional 2.5% damage mitigation. That's like having an extra stack of an Oni Hunter's Garb constantly. That's pretty good. You know, it's just constant damage taking reduction. It'll apply on towers, it'll apply on objectives if you're tanking a Gold Fury. So it really just all depends on the style of character that you're playing. When it comes to what are the best upgrades for the late game, this is really, in my opinion, where I'm making my decisions off of what starter items I want, how I'm going to play the game, how I'm going to build my character, all that type of stuff is based off of the late game starter item upgrade that I want. So I'll go through the differences within each tree and kind of talk about what type of characters you would pick for each one. Starting off, I'm actually going to start with the more niche and then move on to Sentinels, which is a little bit more broad. So Protector's Mask is the most niche starter item because you can only build it on assassins, warriors, and mages. You only get one option, which is Lono's Mask, and we've already talked about this effect a little bit. Basically, it's pretty simple. If you are playing an assassin, mage, or hunter, and you're going to build essentially full tank, then Lono's Mask is the best starter item for you. The reason for that is if you're playing something like a Fenrir or a Nox or a Serket, these are characters that want to be on the front line. They want to be very tanky, but you don't have the base stats of tankiness that a Guardian or a Warrior do. You don't gain as much health per level as those classes do. So to kind of make up for that, you're gaining extra damage mitigation and you're gaining this, you know, physical and magical protection aura, which is really, really nice. This item scales incredibly well, but like I said, you have to hit at least 4 stacks of Lono's Mask, and the reason for that is I don't mind dealing 10% less damage and healing. If I'm on a healer, I might care about the healing thing a little bit, but there are a lot of effects that can get around that. Things like aura items or even like a Lotus Sickle, that type of thing, can temporarily raise your protections and allow you to jump up an extra stack. Even if you're not constantly walking around at that number, you'll probably have it in combat. Another big thing for Lono's Mask is that it's not actually a bad starter item for damage. You just don't want to build the damage until later into the game. So for example, if I were to build Lono's Mask and then Prophetic Cloak and then Gauntlet of Thebes, I can go 2 full damage items after that and have like a hybrid item like a Stone of Binding or something of that. Like I could go Lono's Mask, Prophetic Cloak, Gauntlet of Thebes, Stone of Binding. Instantly, I'm very, very tanky. I will have 5 Lono stacks guaranteed. And then I could build like Spear of the Magus and Soul Reaver, and I'm not going to have any drawback effect. I'm going to do 100% of my normal damage of my healing, and I'm going to have 15% damage mitigation and give a huge aura to all of my teammates. Another really big thing about Lono's Mask and why you might pick it instead of Sentinels or another starter item option is that it doesn't actually have a drawback effect for your teammates. So something like Sentinel's Embrace, the more teammates that I have around, the aura actually gets a lot worse. That is not the case with Lono's. The maximum effect of Lono's is 35 of each protections, and you get that constantly for everybody. Whereas Sentinels, because you're splitting a total pool of 80 protections, if I have 3 people around, I'm always giving a less effective aura than I would have otherwise with Lono's Mask. So in short, the way I see it, if I am playing an assassin, a mage, or a hunter support, it is very simple for me. I pick Lono's mask if I do not want a damage item early. If I am not going to build a damage item at all, or I'm not going to build a damage item until very, very late in the game, maybe I'll just get like a last item Chronos Pendant or Spear of Magus or Soul Reaver or something like that, Lono's mask would be my number one option hands down. For Lono's, I'm looking at characters like Nox, Fenrir. Those are probably the main two that I think about. Their Ket can also fit that very, very well. You can also play this with a character like Hel or Aphrodite, Eset, Baron. Really anybody who qualifies for this, the main thing is that you are just going to build very, very tanky very early on. Next up, we have the War Banner upgrades. To me, choosing between the two of these is kind of straightforward because I just personally don't value Spartan flag that much right now, or really in general. A big reason for that is it just doesn't make you tanky, and 40 or 65 power is actually very, very low. If you were to look at what a damage item might give you, like a Spear of Desolation if I'm a magical character, it's nearly double the power that the Spartan flag would give me, and I feel like you just lose a little bit of value from it because it is not very stat efficient. And then on top of that, you're gaining 6 gold per 5 rather than the 8 gold per 5, so you're getting less gold, it's not giving you that much damage, and you're not as tanky. Another big downside to me with Spartan flag is that it is 10% increased power, not 10% increased damage. Damage increase is much, much better because it is universal. It will apply on items like Kin Size, Soul Reaver. It will just increase any source of damage no matter what. Your Sunder will deal more damage, for example. But 10% increased power, in order for you and your teammates to get a benefit from this, you really have to be a comp that is very, very high scaling. Maybe you have like 4 carries on your team, you have like a Hades solo who's building full damage, that sort of thing. And in that case, this can be very, very good. But if you're the only tank on your team and you're building an item on your starter upgrade that doesn't give you any protections, it is really, really hard for you guys to start a fight, to find an engage, to do anything like that. So in my opinion, it is the most niche of these starter item upgrades by far. And the bigger thing to me is that I just don't think it really carries over the continuity of a character that would want to buy War Flag in the first place. To me, War Banner is the entire reason to buy War Flag, and it's because the idea behind War Flag is that you want to be aggressive in your lane, you want to get ahead, and then you want to prioritize objectives and sieging, and the movement speed and attack speed increase effect from War Flag and War Banner is really core in that, and is what you're trying to take advantage of. When I think of characters that would want to go War Flag and War Banner, I think of characters like Fafnir, Amaterasu, maybe a Horus, maybe a Khepri, characters that do very well, specifically with double hunter compositions. If you have a hunter in the mid lane and a hunter in your carry role, or maybe you only have one hunter, but you have like a Kali or a Bakasura or a Mercury jungle, something like that. Auto attack heavy team compositions, this will be a really, really nice effect to kind of highlight that and really take advantage of that. Another note with War Banner is that it's definitely at its best during sieges because you're able to get the bonus stacks off of the minion wave. But in season 10, in my opinion, War Banner also got a lot better because of the roaming harpies that are on the map. When you're just standing near a Gold Fury or a Fire Giant and you have back harpies that are right next to you and you have these little roaming harpies around the camp, it's actually really easy to sneak in a few stacks of War Banner before those team fights, whereas before you probably would never go into a Fire Giant fight with a fully stacked War Banner ready to go. For the Benevolence upgrades, to me it's kind of the opposite of Protector's Mask and Sentinels, where I'm building those items to be very tanky for myself. When it comes to the Benevolence tree, I want to be a character that's looking to make my teammates tanky. I'm a character where maybe I'm a Khepri or I'm a Geb or an Aphrodite or something like that. You're a more peel-oriented character and you're looking to keep your teammates alive, and you're not necessarily the main frontliner. When you're something like a Geb, you're probably not going to be the one who's diving the enemy team and tanking all of the damage and doing all of that sort of thing. You're more often going to be sitting with your backline trying to keep them alive, trying to provide your relics to them, do whatever you can. And that's where the effects of compassion and heroism really, really shine. To me, I really like heroism against enemies that have single target focus CC. So if there's something like a Fafnir that can only stun one target at a time, or a Hercules that's probably only going to combo one person at a time, or a Fenrir Ot, or something like that, a Sobek Pluck. When you're against those types of CCs, heroism is very, very nice because you can basically bait your soul laner center and have them eat the initial engage and be very, very safe by giving them a shield, and you can look to turn off of that. This is also very good against a character like Thor. They're just standing around. You might be getting poked by him. He might like wall hammer your mage or something like that. This shield will negate that sort of poke as soon as the stun goes through, which is really, really nice. The big thing with Heroism is that it doesn't give you any protections. It does give you a lot of health, which is perfect for the effect, but in order to get the most out of Heroism, you really want to make sure you're building some health in your build. You don't want to have a build that has pure prot items with no tankiness from health on them. You want to make sure that you at least have like a Gauntlet of Thieves or something like that. If you're building Heroism and then building Magi's and Spirit Robe and Mantle of Discord, and you have like 3 items that give you 0 health, you're really not going to be able to get the most out of this effect. Compassion is kind of broader than Heroism in the kind of sense that you don't care how the damage is really coming through, like whether they have an AoE comp or whatever else, you're always going to be mitigating it. Compassion is much better against tick damage than some of these other items. So if you're against a character like, say, Zhang Kui, where there's a lot of single instances of damage from his card, from his ultimate ability, a kin size effect, or an Odysseus bow, smaller tick damage, I'm going to keep going, Heartseeker, Bluestone, Crusher, all of these tick damage items in the game, Compassion is very, very effective against, because it will never exceed the threshold of damage that you're able to mitigate for your teammates, which means you're basically just constantly mitigating it by 15%. You're just lowering the enemy team's damage by 15% flat. That is an incredible effect. The other benefit to Compassion is that it gives you more HP 5 than all of these other items, and that really matters a lot. When you're in a late game team fight scenario or you're in a siege scenario, having 45 HP 5 is really, really nice just to give yourself some added sustain in those spots, and even if you don't notice it, it is going to make a really big difference in longer fights. For me, the things that I'm looking to avoid if I do want to build Compassion is I don't want to be against high single target burst abilities. Let's say it's something like a Scylla root or a Scylla combo, or maybe a crit hunter that has like a Deathbringer. That's when Compassion is actually at its least effective, because they can actually overcap the damage that you're able to mitigate. And while you're still mitigating 15% up until that threshold, you can lose value a little bit later. And it has a pretty significant amount of drawbacks, which is, of course, you have to take the damage, which means that you're going to die a little bit faster. And also, you're not going to be able to use an item like Blink. You really can't go Blink with Compassion, because if your teammates even pull a camp, or they get hit by a minion, or they get poked even a little bit, you just can't Blink. It puts you in combat. It also has some other interactions where it will proc like a Mail of Renewal, for example. If you get hit by a teammate, then your Compassion will deal damage to you, which will mean that you take a stack of Mail of Renewal. So you might proc your own Mail of Renewal without taking a significant amount of damage and just completely wasting the effect of the item for yourself. There's definitely a lot more complexities to Compassion as well, but honestly, the way I think about it is if I'm playing a character that I'm trying to peel my teammates, I'm trying to absorb damage for them, Compassion is one of the first things I consider. All I think about differentiating these two items are, do they have a lot of single target CC or not? If they do, and I feel like Heroism can shut down the way the enemy team composition wants to play, I think that it is more effective. If that's not the case, I think that Compassion is often a little bit better. Another thing to note with Compassion is that it stacks very well with a character like Terra. Terra's ultimate gives your teammates 10% damage mitigation. Adding another 15% on top of that is really, really incredible, especially if you're building protection auras on top of it. The amount of damage mitigation and the amount of protections you can add to your entire team can start to really get out of hand in the late game. Compassion by far will make your team the tankiest. It just has drawbacks that you need to be aware of. I wouldn't worry about them too much though. At the end of the day, you're going to take less damage for your whole team. That's pretty good. For those of you who have been around, you know, maybe the SPL scene or that sort of thing, you might notice that Compassion is probably the most frequently bought option. And the reason for that is actually more meta dependent than anything. We've seen a lot of characters like Khepri and Yemoja in the past couple years, and those are just characters that fit this playstyle of Compassion very, very well. You're going to sit with your backline, you're going to be trying to peel them and keep them alive. So you're already playing the playstyle that Compassion wants to play. The item is very, very good, but like I said, all of these support starter items, except for maybe a couple of them, are really, really good, and it's just meta dependent more than anything. So I wouldn't get too hyper focused on that and really think about like, oh, well, you know, Mike bought this. I wouldn't be thinking like, oh, they bought this, so I should always buy this. It's not that simple. It really depends on meta. If we were in a meta where it's nothing but hunters played everywhere this season, I think you could easily make an argument that War Banner could be the best starter item, whereas in the past couple years the item just wasn't good enough to be considered. I think it is now. So So it really just depends. So try not to get too caught up on that. Finally, the simplest of all, Sentinel's Boon and Sentinel's Embrace. It's pretty broad what characters can fit these items because it's just so basic. It's basically every character. Sentinel's Embrace and Sentinel's Boon is really just, are you having fun or not? Because Sentinel's Embrace will pretty much always make you tankier. Like if you're splitting 80 protections among all of your teammates and you have 5 people around, that means you're getting 16 of each. 30 plus 16 is 46 protections. Boon gives you 45. So you get more procs from Embrace no matter what, and you're giving the aura to your teammates. The only difference is you lose 100 health, which can be significant. 100 health is 100 health, but you're not really doing anything for your teammates with Sentinel's Boon. And the gold income effect, in my opinion, will be outvalued by Embrace and these other gold per 5 mechanics because it doesn't require you to constantly have to farm. If you've played support for long enough, you might notice that you spend a lot of time staring at a fire giant, staring at a gold fury, staring at another team on a siege, just waiting for your team to be grouped, just waiting for an opportunity. And you often have to be the one that is face checking those objectives and trying to stop the enemy team from pulling them. And when that's the case, you're gonna want a gold per 5 item because you're always going to get value out of it and you won't feel bad about missing out on farm. Between the two of these, I think I would pretty much always pick Sentinel's Embrace. The only argument I could ever see for Sentinel's Boon is if you just killed a fire giant and you're about to siege and you think you're about to lose the game if you don't win, like right now, if you think you get very outscaled or something like that, you could try to buy Sentinel's Boon. It is really good for siege scenarios because of the health restored effect, giving you 3% of your health for every single creep kill. I mean, we're talking about 18% of your HP every single wave that gets killed. That's a huge heal. I mean, this can heal you for multiple hundreds throughout a siege. That can be really nice. I just think at the end of the day, the point of the support role is to help your teammates and to make your teammates more tanky or do more damage, and Boon just doesn't do any of that. To me, I would always pick Embrace, and I would pick Embrace over these other items if I value my own tankiness. If I'm a character that specifically cannot build Lono's Mask, if I'm a Guardian or a Warrior, and I really want to be the main tank, the frontliner for my team, that's really when I want to go Sentinels. So I'm thinking characters like in Atlas or in Ardio, Ares, Kabrakan, Ymir, characters that really want to get into the middle of a active team fight, Hercules, that sort of thing. Sobek, if you're the one getting in there and you're engaging for your team, you're really going to want that extra tankiness in the late game. And Sentinel's Gift is also very effective for that playstyle as well, because in the laning phase, you'll get an extra health potion and you'll have more mana sustain. And a lot of those characters that I mentioned are actually quite mana intensive. Something like an Ardio, for example, can go very quickly. So having that extra sustain is really core for you throughout the game. And that's sort of when I would want to play those characters. A couple other things that I actually forgot with Compassion and Heroism. With Compassion, if you build Penetration, it will actually make you take more damage. Magical Penetration. If you are a Guardian and you build % Magical Penetration, it will actually make you take more damage from your own Compassion effect, which is a little goofy, but definitely important to note. On top of that, because it only gives you magical protection, another thing you might want to consider is, are you against a hunter who you think is the main person that's going to kill you? For example, a character like the Morrigan is more so played in mid to kill enemy backliners than she is frontliners. So you might not actually care about the magical protections all that much. That's definitely important to consider. You really want to make sure that you have to be tanky enough to take this damage in the first place. If you're going to get killed by physical gods, it doesn't really matter about your Compassion effect. And then finally, with Heroism, if you saw my Umoja video, my advanced mechanics Umoja video, you might have noticed me abusing it in there, but you are actually able to manipulate Heroism to some extent. So if you are against a character like a Ganesha or a Nox, or if you're with a Umoja, you can actually intentionally get hit by some crowd control effects, or have your teammates get hit by some crowd control effects, to be more specific, and that will just instantly proc your Heroism, and you can use that to tank a tower or to take poke or start a fight. So there's a lot of really neat things that you can do with Heroism, and I'm constantly learning new things because this is the first year that I've really been able to build it a lot in support. And finally, for all of these items, I wanted to give you guys a couple small tips, tricks, interactions that aligns with all of these. Starting off with Benevolence, because this item actually is giving you healing throughout the game, it combos very well with items like Rod of Asclepius and Cad Club if you're a physical character. If you're playing a Guan Yu or a Umoja or a Sylvanas, you might want to consider going Rod of Asclepius and Benevolence, because not only will you improve the healing from your kit, but you will also improve the healing from your Benevolence. So it ends up being a ton of sustain in the mid game, as well as giving your team a cooldown reduction aura. It can be very powerful. powerful. Or I guess if you're a CAD club character, giving your teammates movement speed and crowd control reduction, which in my opinion is even better. For War Flag and War Banner, I had kind of mentioned it before. These effects work very well with the roaming harpy mechanic and just rotating, that sort of thing in general. Just make sure you're paying attention to your actual stacks when you have War Banner and making sure that you try to refresh them as much as you can. If you can get away with just constantly damaging people, that is really, really nice. But I don't believe it'll work on some effects. Like for example, if your Atlas 1 is on the ground and you just keep auto attacking, it won't actually continue to heal your teammates every single tick. Same thing with like Fafnir, Dragon Breath. That would be insanely broken. If it worked that way, you would just perma heal everybody, but it is still very strong. When it comes to Lono's mask, I had kind of mentioned it earlier in the video, but Prophetic Cloak and Gauntlet of Thebes, at least one of them should be your first item when you build Lono's mask. They are the bread and butter to this item working. You really, really need a hybrid defense item that has a great base for you. Ideally, I'm just focusing on hybrid defense items in general because I'm able to get more protections in my build. I don't really care that much about how much health I'm building when I have a Lono's character because I get 300 health from the upgrade anyways. It is a ton of health. I mostly just want to make sure I get those stacks online. And if you were to stack Lono's with Prophetic Cloak with Thebes, the auras that you give your teammates are just absolutely incredible. You can get up to near 100 protections of each type in an aura to you and everyone you're around. It is really, really powerful. Lono's mask also will allow you to transition into kind of a damage mitigation build. So if you had Lono's mask and Prophetic Cloak and Spirit Robe and like Oni Hunter's Garb or Berserker Shield, you can get over 50% constant damage mitigation in your build, which can make you the tankiest character in the game. No other role, no other class can achieve that. That is Lono specific, is very, very powerful with that. Another thing to mention between Lono's mask as well as Sentinel's Embrace, because it gives you extra protections in the way something like a Compassion or Heroism might not, the aura effect on those protections are actually very good for item synergy. So an item like Prophetic Cloak, that on the evolve it will give you extra damage mitigation once you reach 400 protections and then 600 total protection. Having extra prots from your Lono's aura, from your Sentinel's aura, will help you reach those thresholds quicker, which is really nice. It's the same thing with an item like Pride Wind. It'll help you get a bigger shield because you just have more protections yourself. Same thing with Glad Shield, more protections, more damage. There's a lot of synergy that works with this type of stuff, and there are also in-kit synergies for characters that have some sort of scaling function or work off of their own protections. Definitely keep that in mind when you're making your build with those sort of characters. Now, for my fellow visual learners out there, I'll do a quick little tier list to kind of give you an idea of how strong I think each of these starter items are. Again, remember, this is all very meta reliant, so this can change over time. So I'm going to try to ignore that as much as I can and just focus on how strong I think the actual item is. I'll focus on the laning phase versions, and as I kind of mentioned earlier, I think War Flag is the best item in the laning phase. I would probably put Sentinel second, and then I would put Benevolence and then Lono's mask. For me, the big differentiator here is that after the initial laning phase, I think Benevolence is significantly better. But again, if you're playing a Lono's mask character, the upgrade is so strong that it'll fit what you want to do anyways. The three of these are really interchangeable. It's mostly just War Flag is the best in terms of actually fighting in your lane. Ranking the rest of these starters, in my opinion, Compassion is kind of broken. If you are in a scenario where you are playing the right style of character, it makes sense with your build, it is really, really good. You wouldn't even like think of how much damage is actually tick damage in this game. Bluestone and Kin Size and Soul Reaver and just all of these types of damage are so tick reliant that mitigating those by 15% is so incredibly powerful throughout all stages of the game. And especially in the late game, the amount of HP 5 that you get on Compassion is really, really disgusting. The big thing about it is that you just can't go Blink, but in my opinion, there's so many other strong relics right now in support that going Blink isn't actually mandatory or that necessary by any means, so Compassion is just very, very good. Heroism, I would actually put right below Compassion, and the main effect for that is that it's single target and being able to help your teammates. You're losing a lot of protections yourself, and there's a cooldown on the item. There are going to be times where it does absolutely nothing for your teammates, and it can also be manipulated both ways. While you and your team can try to abuse it in a certain direction, so can the enemy team. The enemy team could try to proc your heroism on your soul laner, who they had no intent of trying to kill anyways, and then instantly start a fight on your backline while you have that ability on cooldown, and then you just do nothing for them. So I think over time, it'll be kind of like a skill gap element, where if people are really playing around heroism, Heroism, they can negate the effects quite a lot. Not to mention there are items like Erosion now, which are anti-shielding items, or having a Sunder or something like that. You can actually just mitigate the shield of a Heroism completely. To me, Lono's mask is the best support starter in the game. It is by far the best for your own tankiness. It is by far the best protection aura for your teammates, and on top of that, fits so well with what you want to do on those styles of characters. It also, in my opinion, transitions into a damage build the late game better than any of these starters, because all I need is Gauntlet of Thebes and Prophetic Cloak, and I'm kind of ready to go. I just build those 2 items, and then I can put damage in the rest of my build, and I'm giving my teammates like 100 of each protections. I gain a ton of damage mitigation. I start doing a lot of damage and healing. It is the best late game full build combo that you can get. War Banner I would put right next to Heroism in the strong tier. It's still good. It's just a little bit niche in my opinion. I think that if you were able to get the stacks more consistently going into a fire giant fight or that sort of thing, it could be a little bit better. But keep in mind, this item is mainly driving double hunter comps and driving objective damage comps to kind of snowball and end the game. It will be very, very powerful to have a War Banner on a siege scenario, or to try to, you know, get a fire giant and burn it, that sort of thing. It is really, really good for that, so you can absolutely go it. Just make sure that your team scales off of auto attack damage. That's when you really want to build this. Spartan flag, I'm sorry to say, is purely for fun gaming. It is not very good, but you might be able to do some interesting builds. Maybe if you're building a high damage character, you might want the power increase if your whole team is being super greedy and you're basically playing 5 carries. It'll still give you the gold per 5 effect that the other support starters do, while also giving you more power and just more damage in your build. So it really is just for fun. I think it does have potential, but it won't be nearly as consistent as these other starters. And the same thing for Sentinel's Boon. It is just a for fun gaming item. If you want to play support and you want to help your teammates, these other items will be much, much better and more consistent and more helpful, and will get you BM'd less. But there's no doubt about it, Boon is really fun. For what it's worth, Boon and War Banner, all these items, these are broken in other game modes. If you're playing outside of Conquest, these items are mega, mega, mega broken. And then last, but certainly not least, is Sentinel's Embrace. And in my opinion, this item is right in between broken and very strong. It is really good. It is just, the more specific you can be with it, the better it gets. So if you are only going to be near a couple of your teammates at a given time, you know that fights are going to be split. My divers are going to dive, their divers are going to dive us. We'll be having like 2 kind of separate team fights in the middle of one team fight. That's when Sentinel's Embrace is really, really powerful, and it is very good. But overall, in my opinion, you go any of these 5 starter items, you really cannot go wrong. You will be very strong, and I think you will have a lot of success. If you stuck around this long, I really appreciate you for watching. I hope the video was helpful, and I hope that you were able to learn from it or get something out of it, no matter what skill level you are playing at. In my opinion, the support role is the most fun in Smite, and part of it is because of our starter items, how diverse they can be, how many different styles we're allowed to play because of them. I think it's just really, really cool, and it's really enjoyable to just have a week where I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna play War Flag only characters, or I'm gonna play Heroism only and see how I can do with like shielding effects with like a Geb or something like that. I think there's always something interesting to do. Let me know what some of your favorite combos are, or what starter items you like to buy and build on certain characters. If you want to see other guides or other videos like this, please leave a comment. Let me know what topics you would like me to talk about. If you want to see more videos like this and you enjoyed this one, please consider liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.
One if I'm trolling from Professor BM. You can hear the audience. I wonder if they're